It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. So good to have you in studio with us today. Dave Curtis with the American Red Cross in studio. Of course, we've got to bring everybody in that had anything to do with the slide fire and find out, what the experience was like and how that works out. And of course, American Red Cross is always quick to respond, right?
Right.
Welcome to studio.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. Let's jump right into it. RedCross.org is probably the best website to go to for any information about the Red Cross. And we'll get into it a little later on the show, but Red Cross offers more than just responding to evacuations and fires and things like that. There's other things the Red Cross offers. But I thought with you here, Dave, we'd just kind of get your feel of when the slide fire touched off. Wasn't long before Trudy Thompson Rice down in Phoenix was called and said, hey, we need a shelter set up in Flagstaff.
Right.
So take us from there.
Well, initially, when the crews went in there, they evacuated right away. Mm-hmm. And so that's the Red Cross's clue, is to set up a shelter. And the shelter is set up at the request of the County Emergency Services, the Director of Emergency Services. And so they know there's going to be an evacuation, so they request the Red Cross to come in and open up a shelter. Now, all shelters are predetermined.
The location of it?
Yeah, the location.
Okay.
And mainly we do that because of ADA. We got to make sure there's showers, there's proper bathrooms. Anybody can have access to it.
Seems like schools are picked a lot.
Yeah, they have the big gymnasiums, they have big showers, they have big bathrooms. There's a lot of space. They have parking, so they're sort of perfect for a shelter.
Okay.
Sonagawa Middle School was already designated a long time ago as the primary shelter, and it was out of the smoke range. Even though Flagstaff did get inundated with smoke on a couple days.
Oh, yeah.
And so since they were evacuating initially because of the type of fire in the canyon, the shelter was open immediately. So within the first, I would say, 5 hours from the fire started, the shelter was up and operating. They already had volunteers there. They had cots set up. They had arranged with the Salvation Army to provide feeding at the shelter. We had nurses up there, some mental health counselors to help people sort of, it's an emotional thing when you get evacuated, and especially at a last minute notice. What was unique about this, this evacuation is that there was a bunch of campgrounds up there.
Oh, true. I guess I'd never thought about that.
Yeah, so it's not just people who have homes, but people who don't know the area. They're from out of town, they're camping, and all of a sudden somebody comes through and says, get out.
You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, you got 5 minutes. You can't, whatever you got in your hands, you got to get out, and there's a shelter here. Hopefully you have a GPS or a phone that's going to show you how to get to it because you don't know where it's at. And a lot of our initial clients at the shelter were from campgrounds.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So out-of-towners that just were camping, and I knew there was a newlywed couple in
Oak
Creek.
Those are the famous ones.
Yeah, they made a big deal about them because they just got married, they were on their honeymoon, and they had all that brand new camping gear, and they were told to
leave.
Gotta go.
Yeah, I believe they, the honeymooners, they were coming down from one of the springs or the water someplace, and they just had their bathing suits and T-shirts on, and she just had her bathing suit and a T-shirt on, and their phones, and that was it.
Wow. Now, what about hikers and stuff back in there? Actually, I remember my wife going, what about the people that were back hiking in West Fork that may be way back in there that have no idea that something like this is going on? Do you remember having hikers or anything like that come in?
No, that doesn't. Okay. No hikers.
Mostly the campers then?
Mostly the campers in the campgrounds, yeah.
Okay.
Even some of the residents of the June19 Resort and stuff, we had a few of those, but not too many.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now the thing is when they arrive, and let me ask you this: was it better this time? Because I know we've been kind of pushing this each time we do one of these county-wides with Red Cross, or we get Trudy Thompson Rice on the phone. Is how is the registration process going? Because that's really something we've been pushing over the last couple of years. Is that if you are evacuated, at least stop in and register.
Right. And the Red Cross has a program called Safe and Well, and so when you first come to the shelter, somebody will meet you, give you a little orientation, find out what your needs are. If you're a family or singles,
They've got to be wild-eyed when they show up, too.
They're just kind of stunned.
Lost?
They're lost.
Yeah.
Right, right. They just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's what the mental health counselors are there to help them work with, to help them sort of work through that process. But the Safe and Well registration, which is really important, as you mentioned, it puts them into a national database. And you're right, we try to encourage people, even if though you're not going to stay at the shelter, say you're going to go down to Motel 6, because a lot of people will do that, come in and register. So your family members in California, whatever, they can go to redcross.org under Safe and Well, and they could pull up your name, and they could see that you are out of the evacuation area, or you are out of the danger area.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's really important. So
tell me some of your experiences with the folks coming in that first night. Because it was, well, the fire was morning hours, 11:30, 12:30, and then by I think 5 o'clock, there was a shelter up, because I remember I called Trudy and had spoken with her the evening of the fire. So what was it like with those first flow of people coming in?
Well, it was, like you said, it was a young couple, the honeymooners. There was a young family with 2 kids. There was another family with a couple kids, and they were mostly, like you said, the campers. They weren't the ones staying in hotels. And they were hungry, they were wet. Like you said, they didn't know what was happening. Are they going to be able to get their stuff? Has their stuff been destroyed? You know, did they lose everything? Like the honeymooners, you know, they bought all that camping equipment with their money from their wedding presents.
Right.
And they went to Sedona because that was their first date. And so they made a point of going there camping, and they were just worried that they were going to lose everything. And you know, they both worked at a restaurant down in Phoenix, so they didn't have a lot. You know, they were what, 20, 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
So they're looking for information, is what they're really looking for at that point. They're looking for information on what's happening, so they have an idea of what's going on, and they also want to know, are they going to have a secure place to stay and food? You know, like I said, they came in with bathing suits and stuff like that, and there was now this is the kind of community we live in. There was a lady who's a reporter for one of the TV stations out of Phoenix, and she lives in Flagstaff. And she was interviewing them. And she saw that they just had a t-shirt and bathing suit on. She went home and found clothes for her and brought them back to the shelter so they would have some regular clothes to wear.
Right, nice.
Yeah, nobody asked her to do it. But that's the type of people that we live in our communities. They just saw a need and they took care of it.
We saw that too last year with the Yarnell and Dosey fire.
Yeah, right.
And the one thing about those 2 fires that really strike out outside of the obvious is that and we were talking on Tuesday on this, is that there were cattle and horses and sheep and goats that had to be evacuated from areas.
Right.
And all the local ranchers and farm people and you name it, if they had a horse trailer, they went down there and scooped all those animals up and took them out of there. And I guess that shows it too, just how willing everybody is to help
out
in crisis.
Yeah.
In crisis. Well, that's what you are. You're a volunteer for the Red Cross.
Volunteer, right.
Yeah. We have to take a break, okay?
Okay.
Dave Curtis in studio today with the American Red Cross Grand Canyon chapter, redcross.org for more information. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how you can help protect your community from wildfires.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Look at me. Hey.
Raymond, look at Mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe he can't hear us. Maybe we're not stimulating him enough. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
Welcome back to Countywide. Dave Curtis with the American Red Cross Grand Canyon chapter in studio today, redcross.org for more information. We had to set up a second time with the slide fire.
Right.
And then just this past Monday, we had the June19 fire. We had a down power line is what they think the cause of that fire was. So, again, it was scramble, get set up, but that was kind of short-lived. Is that difficult for the Red Cross?
You know, it is kind of typical. We sort of react to the emergency services on the ground, or the local county emergency services. So if they feel there's a need, we respond. And example is the shelters. If there's a shelter, if they say we're going to evacuate, then we set up a shelter. And typically the way it works is the dispatch center will call the Red Cross. It could either be the Phoenix office or like in Prescott, Yavapai County, our local office, and say, hey, we're going to evacuate this particular subdivision because of a fire. Then we start the wheels rolling to get a shelter open. Our goal is to have a shelter fully functional in 2 hours or less.
That's pretty fast then.
Yeah, and it's done all by volunteers.
Now, how do you know how much to set up? Do you know what I mean? If a subdivision is going to be evacuated, is there kind of a predetermined number, or just do you kind of get there and then as people come in, you kind of set up?
Well, yeah, initially, you know, we sort of expect 20%
Okay.
of the people will come to a shelter, 20% or less. The other ones will go to family members, they'll go out of town to family members, they may go to a hotel.
Friends.
Yeah, friends. And so we have shelter trailers pre-positioned around the state.
So you have one in Prescott?
I have one in Prescott.
Flagstaff, I imagine?
Flagstaff. There's currently one in here in Verde Valley.
Okay.
Up at the county yard. And these shelter trailers have cots, tables, chairs, snacks, water, signage, stuff like that for about 200 people.
Okay.
And so initially what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll set up probably about 50 cots and chairs and stuff like that to see how many people coming in. And then if more than that come in, then we'll start setting up more and more cots. We'll expand as we need it.
What's kind of the liked number of volunteers to show up when something like this kicks off?
Initially, about 15 to 20.
Okay.
Yeah, Red Cross volunteers. And so, you know, they're just you and I in the community.
Right.
They're doing their grocery shopping. They may be at work and stuff like that. And when their phone goes off, they get a text message or something like that. They drop what they're doing and they go do the shelter.
And we talked before the show that you have a certain amount of time to decide what it is you're going to do, whether you can or can't, right?
Yeah, if it's a local deployment, which is typically in the state or the county, you have about 2 hours, or probably even less, for a local deployment because it's happening now. If it's a national deployment, such as Hurricane Sandy, or like a year before was Hurricane Isaac down in the Gulf, typically you have 60 minutes to decide to let them know that you're going to go.
Oh, really? So the really huge, big, major events, you got to know now.
Yeah, right.
How do you do that personally?
Well, you try to keep track of what's happening. You know, what they're like right now. It's hurricane season, and so actually Red Cross has an app, a hurricane app you can put on your phone, and it tracks all the hurricanes.
Okay.
So if the National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning, you could see it, and you know that what category it is and stuff like that. And so you sort of know, okay, there's a hurricane coming, we may deploy to Mississippi.
There's a possible chance you're going to get a phone call.
Yeah. So you try to work your life around it, get things ready, have your bag sort of packed a little bit.
I know this time of year I'm always out, if I'm out in the yard doing something, which right now we're painting the house, I'm always doing this, looking around for that trail of smoke to see it. I'm like, okay, the sky's still blue, that's
what's
great.
happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing the same thing, you're just in tune with that.
Yeah, see what's happening,
Certain
what's going
disasters, tornadoes this time of year, hurricanes this time of year.
Tornadoes, yeah. And so the Red Cross has an app for hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, first aid. You can go to the App Store and download them for free. And you know the great thing about those apps is that you say we live in Arizona, and you say, well, there's no hurricanes in Arizona, but I may have a family member that lives in Mississippi, or Florida, somewhere down in the Gulf. I could put their address in that app, and if an alert goes off for that area, it will pop up on my phone here in Arizona.
Right.
So I know that my family, you know, something's happened around where my family lives.
Right.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Yeah, so.
Now you went to Big Sandy.
Went to Hurricane Sandy, spent 3 weeks there. It was interesting. It was my first huge deployment. I've been on some smaller ones for a week and a half, 2 weeks, but this was the biggest one.
What was that like?
It was interesting. I worked in a kitchen. So me and my partner, we drove what they call ERVs, emergency response vehicles. They look like Red Cross ambulances, but it's specifically designed for feeding. And we'd go into the kitchen every morning, and they would load us up with 500 to 1,000 meals.
Wow.
And then
pre-made.
Pre-made,
okay.
Right. Which is made by the Southern Baptist Men's Group. I mean, actually made on the site there.
Wow, okay.
It's not pre-packaged food. It's actually made fresh there on the site. And we put them in these big hot containers and stuff. And then we're given an area to go to. For example, we went down to the Bronx several days, Coney Island, stuff like that. And we would set up on a corner, basically open up shop. And all these families would come in, and we would just sit there and feed all day long until the food was gone.
Wow.
And then when we were done, somebody would come and replace us. Because the big thing about Sandy was a lot of places got flooded, but the main thing was the power was out.
Right.
And so there was no heat, there was no cooking, and all the stores were shut down. And so people had really a dry place to go, but it was cold. And then we came in and brought in blankets and mops and buckets to help, you know, people out, stuff like that.
We rely on that power, don't we?
Yeah. Without the power, we're kind of stuck.
Yeah, we are. We have to take another break, okay?
Okay.
Dave Curtis with the American Red Cross Grand Canyon Chapter, redcross.org. I'm Paul David, county-wide, back in just a couple minutes.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
One of the areas still maturing in an adolescent brain is the prefrontal cortex. So when we take drugs, we alter key motivational circuits, changing the wiring needed for the cognitive function of the brain, until we can't totally deal with things like memory, thinking things out, and even learning stuff.
The signs are there. So is our help. Visit the partnership at drugfree.org for practical advice on coping with teen drug use.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it! I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a few minutes left of the program. Dave Curtis in studio today with the American Red Cross, redcross.org for more information. We've talked about the disasters, the evacuations, a little bit about you going over for Hurricane Sandy, but you guys respond. I saw on the website this morning, and I was going to the website before you guys get here for the show, but it says every 15 hours, the American Red Cross Grand Canyon chapter responds to a disaster. That's a lot of disasters, and it's not just the. I think people think Red Cross and, like we talked, hurricane, tornadoes, and then, you know, wildfires and things like that. But it's not. If my house catches on fire, you guys will show up.
We're going to be there.
Yeah.
And that's why we need volunteers. Because we have what they call a DAT team, Disaster Action Team.
Okay.
And that's just local volunteers who volunteer their time. If there's a house fire, you know, every time you see a house fire in the news in Phoenix, there's probably a Red Cross volunteer there helping them find a place to stay for a couple days, helping them get some new clothes if their clothes are destroyed, maybe providing some food for a week for their family. If they have a baby, we'll help them with diapers.
Do you do that? Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the house fires in the area?
Right. Yeah, several times.
Because I imagine you're very convenient.
Yeah, living
right
here in the area.
Yeah.
You know, we had, here in the Verde Valley, we had a couple that was traveling through and their motorhome caught on fire.
Right.
Out of the area.
Just recently.
Don't know where to go. They lost everything. I mean, they got out with basically a T-shirt and their underwear. And the Red Cross was there to help them, put them up in a hotel for several days, took them to Walmart, got them clothes, got them food, helped them get through that first 72 hours where they can sort of get their mind back together, talk to their insurance, talk to their families, but help them that first step to recovery. And that's what the Red Cross volunteers do. And we always need volunteers. And
I was going to ask you, how is the volunteers? I know, remember Trudy said, I think the Quad City area was doing pretty good with volunteers, but of course they can always use more. But the Verde Valley seems to be short on volunteers for just about every group that comes through the door.
Yeah, you know, the Red Cross only has 8 volunteers in the Verde Valley.
That's not nearly enough, though.
We need more.
Yeah.
And so we encourage people to go to redcross.org, and then you can go to the GCC, Grand Canyon chapter, and there's a tab that says volunteer. And you could apply online, fill out the application to be a volunteer, and then somebody will contact you and figure out what you like to do. Because a volunteer has several volunteer positions. It's not always just going to fires or going to disasters.
Okay. There's different jobs.
A lot of jobs.
Okay.
A lot of jobs, yeah. And so there's a little tailored, unique niche for everybody in the Red Cross.
And it's kind of based on whatever hours you can give, right?
Right, right.
I mean, they don't expect you to work 40 hours a week as a volunteer for the Red Cross, but what you can give is great. With only 8 down the Verde Valley, that's got to keep you guys pretty busy.
We do stay busy, but the Verde Valley it's like we run 2 or 3 calls and then it's pretty quiet for a while. And we're backed up by the volunteers over on the Prescott side.
Okay.
So if we need assistance, we can call them and they'll come over. If we get an apartment fire that's got 10 clients or whatever, we'll call in the Prescott volunteers and they'll drive over and help us out.
All right. Thank you for your time, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in. American Red Cross, Grand Canyon Chapter, redcross.org. I'm Paul David. That's today's Countywide. We'll talk to you again next time.